Hello, good morning, good evening, Mr. X's class. This is a new version of the video for theory for week 5, level 4. I apologize for the fact that I made an earlier video, but I think I didn't realize at the time that the sound was completely not working for that video. So you can watch it, but you can't hear anything that I'm saying, so I'm making another one now here. So theory, so this is version 2 of the theory video. Theory has 2 syllables, and as you can see, if it were written in Spanish, more or less it would be that, like I wrote it over there, T-H-I-R-I, theory. Stress on the first syllable, the. Big thing to notice is the O is silent. Do not say theory, which in Spanish you do say teoría, right? But in English, you do not say theory, you say theory. And so another thing, so it is a noun, and it has 2 meanings, and those 2 meanings are actually, this can be a bit confusing because the 2 meanings are pretty different from each other, so we'll talk about that. So meaning number 1 on your card is a meaning for science, what we use like in science class. And this is a very specific use of the word. It means a formal set of ideas that is intended to explain why something happens or exists. And another thing about that, it's a formal set of ideas, and that means, if you see my arrow over on the left, it's ideas that are already proved by many experiments. It's not a guess. It's an idea that's already been proven to be true after many experiments. Let's get a little more into that. What does that mean? So when we talk about theories in science, it's part of the scientific method, which you probably heard about in your science classes. So a scientific method is how does science work? So science is supposed to work in this way. You're supposed to start with what's called a hypothesis, which is a guess about what will happen. So for example, however many years ago, 400 or 500 years ago, I don't remember the exact year, but Galileo in Italy had a hypothesis about if you dropped a bunch of things off the tower, the Leaning Tower of Pisa in Italy. He went up to the top of this tower, dropped a bunch of things, different sizes, different weights, and his theory was, I think his theory may have been that, well, this seems like common sense anyway, right, that if you drop something that's heavy, you think that heavy thing will fall faster than something that's light. That might be the guess. Okay, then he goes, that's step 1, the hypothesis, the guess. Then, if you're a scientist, you say, well, let's not just make a guess. Let's see if that guess is really true or not. How do you see if it's true or not? You do an experiment. An experiment is where you figure out a way to do something that will test whether that guess is actually true or it's not true. And so what he did was, first he makes this prediction. This is what I think will happen when I drop stuff. If I drop stuff, right? Then he actually climbs up the tower and drops lots and lots and lots of things and measured the time, very precisely, the time that it took him to fall down. Then he could figure out the speed. So that's step 2. Then when you get to a theory, is after you do the experiments. After you do the experiments, then you look and you see, okay, what formal set of ideas can I come up with to explain how and why this is happening? So, so what he came up with was that I think he originally might have thought that heavy objects fell faster, or at least that's certainly common sense for many people, but it's not true. Actually, all objects, except for the differences, except for air resistance for like big wide things that the air slows it down on the Earth, but apart from that, everything will fall. It doesn't matter how heavy it is, it falls at the same speed. So he figured that out by doing a bunch of experiments, measuring it. He sees, oh, those are the results. Let's plug it into an equation and do a function, figure out what the equation is for that. And based on these many experiments that showed that things are falling at the same speed, he not only said they fall at the same speed, he also says what that speed is. It's a number. So, and I believe it's 9.8 meters per second, that every second it gets that much faster when things fall, any object. That's a theory because it's based on many experiments and it's a formal set of ideas. Okay, so we would say Newton's theory of classical mechanics is this, so my sentence, Newton's theory of classical mechanics explains why objects fall down. Classical mechanics is like physics. It's the theories that Isaac Newton invented, came up with, based on experiments, which explain basically all the movement in the universe. But he figured that out by first making a guess, then doing experiments, then you come up with a theory. So the theory is not a guess in this case. It's something that you get at the end of a long process. And it's pretty hard to disprove a theory in science. In science, usually once you get a theory, it's everybody accepts the theory. It's like, that's pretty for sure that this theory is true. You have to find, it's tricky to find much evidence that contradicts the theory, because the theory is already based on a lot of experiments. Okay, that's definition 1. Okay, now what confuses people is definition 2 sometimes, okay, because definition 2 is the way we use theory in everyday life, not in science. And in everyday life it says a theory is an opinion or idea that somebody believes to be true but is not proved. In other words, that's not on your card, but basically it's a guess, which is really different. In science, it's not a guess. In everyday life, it's a guess. But sometimes we use words in a different way in an academic class than we do in everyday life. So here's the sentence that I made up for everyday life with theory. My theory about the student's late homework is that he or she might have to work the night shift. That could be a reason why somebody wouldn't complete the homework on time. So that's a guess, right? And then if you ask her, you'll see if it's true. Okay, I'll stop there, and I will record another video with the synonyms, antonyms, and the sentence for the back of the card. Synonyms, antonyms, and word families.